All right, so this video is about crowding out, okay? And when we talk about crowding out, what we're talking about is whether or not the government policy worked, right? Whether or not the fiscal policy worked. And specifically what I'm going to use as the example is whether or not we moved out of recessionary gap. So if you want to push pause real fast, and I want you to draw 3 recessionary gaps, just one on top of another, and that way you can see what is occurring, right? And we can draw it and we can look at it at the same time. All right, I didn't draw those very straight, but they'll work for our purposes. So real GDP, and real GDP. And then price level, and price level. Now I'm going to draw my long run aggregate supply curve here. And remember, that's our goal. That's where we want to get to. And we do so, if we're going to be in a recessionary gap, we're going to do so through some expansionary fiscal policy. And so remember, we're going to have our X marks the spot on this side. So we have aggregate demand, we have short run aggregate supply, and we're going to do that for each one of them. Short run aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and again, 3 recessionary graphs. So short run aggregate supply and aggregate demand. Now, and again, all of these are recessionary gaps. I'm going to go to the very top and I'm going to demonstrate through recessionary gap. Now, if we have a recessionary gap, remember, we're going to have expansionary fiscal policy. And when we have expansionary fiscal policy, we increase government spending and or decrease taxes, right? So that we're moving, the AD curve is going to increase all the way to long run equilibrium. That's what we want to occur, okay? That's the purpose. Now, if it works perfectly, right, we have something called zero crowding out. So if we know that we need to increase government spending by $500 million, and no other part of SIGNEX changes, right? That we have no change, and that's that little triangle is no change in consumption, investments, or net exports, then the fiscal policy works as it should, and it moves us all the way over here to 82, right? And we move to a long run equilibrium. So if you have zero crowding out, we move to long run equilibrium. The expansionary fiscal policy, and I'm just going to abbreviate, fiscal policy worked. It worked. All right, so that's one type of crowding out, is zero crowding out. So let's move to the next one. So sometimes it only partially works. And if we start talking about partial work, we're only partially crowd out, correct? And then we can have like a complete, so again, we can have incomplete crowding out as well. So let's say that we increase government spending by $500 million, thinking that that is going to move us all the way to long run equilibrium, right? We think that curve's going to move all the way over here. But at the same time, investments go down by $250 million. Now the overall change, right, that change in SIGNEX is only partial. It's only an increase of $250 million. So the curve only moves partial way. It doesn't move all the way to long run equilibrium. Our new short run equilibrium is going to be right here, right? So it moved a little, right? The change in real GDP was a little. It moved it to a lesser of recessionary gap, but we call this incomplete crowding out. All right, the third type of crowding out is when we have complete crowding out. So what happens is we increase government spending by $500 million through fiscal policy, thinking it's going to move us all the way. But at the same time, let's say investments go down by $250. And if that were all, we'd move part of the way, just not all the way to long run equilibrium. But let's say that at the same time, consumption goes down as well, $250 million, which makes our change in SIGNEX 0. So the AD curve doesn't move at all. It stays exactly where it is. And we call this complete crowding out. Now, this is what happened with President Obama when we had a recessionary gap in 2008. They implemented $7 trillion of government spending, thinking it was going to move us to long-run equilibrium. It was offset by a decrease in the other 3 by $700 trillion, and it did not move the AD curve at all. the AD curve will stay exactly at the same spot. So if you have zero crowding out, it moves us all the way to long-run equilibrium. If you have incomplete crowding out, we move part of the way. And then if you have complete crowding out, we don't move at all. And the fiscal policy did not work. And that's crowding out.